There's a specific assumption most people make about family relationships, that shared genetics creates natural alignment of interests, that blood relation means automatic trustworthiness, that family members inherently want what's best for you and can be trusted with complete transparency about your life. This assumption is dangerous because it ignores fundamental reality about human psychology. People operate based on their own interests, fears, and psychological patterns regardless of genetic relationship. Family members have their own anxieties, insecurities, and worldviews that shape how they respond to information about your life. When you provide complete transparency to family about your plans, vulnerabilities, relationships, and strategies, you're assuming they'll process that information supportively. But they process it through their own psychological frameworks, which may not align with your interests. Niccolò Machiavelli understood that trust shouldn't be granted based on relationship category. It should be earned through demonstrated behavior. The prince who trusted advisors just because they claimed loyalty often found that loyalty evaporated when interests conflicted. The leader who shared complete information with allies discovered that information used against him when circumstances changed. This principle applies to family relationships, not because family members are malicious, but because their psychological patterns and interests don't always align with yours. Information you share transparently gets processed through their fears, their worldview, their position in family dynamics. This creates specific vulnerabilities. When you reveal ambitious plans, they might respond from their own fear of change rather than support for your growth. When you expose relationship problems, they process that through their own relationship to your partner rather than objective assessment. When you share vulnerabilities, they might use those as pressure points later when their interests conflict with yours. The alternative to complete transparency isn't dishonesty, it's strategic disclosure. You're selective about what information you share, when you share it, and how much detail you provide. You maintain relationships while protecting your interests through calibrated information management. This feels wrong initially because you've been taught that family deserves complete honesty, that withholding information is betrayal, that selective disclosure is manipulation. But these teachings assume family members will always use information you share in ways that serve your interests. That assumption doesn't match reality. Type this in the comments. I practice strategic disclosure. When you share ambitious plans with family members, you're assuming they'll respond with support and encouragement. Often, they respond with concern, doubt, or subtle discouragement instead. Not from malice, but from their own psychological patterns. Consider what happens psychologically when you announce significant ambition. If you're planning major career change, substantial wealth building, or geographic relocation, you're signaling that your life will change dramatically. For family members whose relationship with you is based on current dynamics, your change threatens familiar patterns. This isn't conscious opposition necessarily. It's psychological discomfort with disruption to established equilibrium. Family systems tend toward homeostasis, maintaining stable patterns. When one member announces plans that would dramatically change their role or position, the system resists that change through various mechanisms. The resistance often appears as concern. Are you sure that's realistic? What if it doesn't work out? Isn't that risky? These questions seem supportive on surface, family members expressing care about your well-being. But psychologically, they're often expressing their own discomfort with change disguised as concern for you. Machiavelli observed that leaders who announced ambitious plans before executing them often faced resistance from those who benefited from current arrangements. The announcement gave opponents time to organize resistance. The leader who acted first and announced after faced less organized opposition. Applied to family, announcing ambitious plans before they're substantially underway invites concern, doubt, and subtle discouragement that can undermine your confidence. Executing first, then sharing results, eliminates the period where family anxiety about change can influence your commitment. This doesn't mean hiding all ambition permanently. It means timing disclosure strategically. Share plans when they're far enough along that family concern can't derail them. Announce changes when they're substantially complete rather than when they're vulnerable early stages. The person who announces they're considering major career change faces pressure to justify, explain, and defend that decision before it's made. The person who announces they've made major career change faces fait accompli. The decision is made. Discussion shifts to supporting implementation rather than debating wisdom. This timing difference is strategically significant. Early disclosure invites intervention in decision-making process. Late disclosure provides information after decisions are final. Most people disclose early seeking validation and support. This makes sense emotionally, but creates strategic vulnerability. Family members process your plans through their own anxiety rather than supporting your vision. Strategic disclosure means sharing after commitment is solid, not during vulnerable consideration phase when doubt is easily planted. Modern therapeutic culture promotes radical honesty about emotional wounds and psychological vulnerabilities. Applied to family relationships, this often backfires catastrophically. When you expose your deepest insecurities and fears to family members, you're providing detailed map of your psychological pressure points. This seems safe because they're family, but family members also have their own emotional patterns, including how they handle conflict. When arguments occur, and they will, people default to available weapons. If you've previously disclosed that your deepest fear is abandonment or your core insecurity is feeling inadequate, watch what emerges during heated disagreements. The vulnerability you shared in moment of openness becomes ammunition during moment of conflict. Not necessarily through calculated malice, often through automatic pattern of hitting where it hurts most. Family members know your vulnerabilities intimately because you shared them, and conflict activates tendency to target what you've identified as painful. Machiavelli advised never exposing your weaknesses to potential opponents. Family members aren't opponents usually, but they're also not unconditionally supportive. They have their own emotional patterns, and those patterns include how they fight when threatened or angry. The strategic approach is healing psychological wounds privately through professional support, journaling, or other methods that don't involve sharing complete vulnerability map with people who might use it against you later. This isn't about being closed. It's about being selective about who gets access to your deepest vulnerabilities. You can maintain warm family relationships while keeping your psychological architecture private. You can be emotionally present without being completely transparent about every insecurity and wound. You can process trauma without using family as processing partners. The person who shares complete psychological vulnerability with family often regrets that disclosure during first serious conflict. The ammunition they provided gets deployed. The insecurities they exposed get targeted. The vulnerabilities they shared become pressure points. The person who processes vulnerabilities privately and shares only curated version with family maintains better position. Family members can support without having detailed map of where to apply pressure if conflict emerges. This doesn't mean being emotionally distant or fake. It means distinguishing between genuine emotional presence and strategic vulnerability about your deepest psychological wounds. You can be present, warm, connected while maintaining privacy about your psychological architecture. Strategic emotional management means being selective about vulnerability disclosure, not eliminating emotional connection entirely. When romantic relationships hit difficult periods, the instinct is seeking ally and support. For many people, that means venting to family about partners' flaws, relationship conflicts, and frustrations. This creates significant long-term problems. Here's the psychological dynamic. You fight with your partner, emotions run high. You call family member to vent. You describe everything wrong with your partner, emphasizing their worst moments. Family member hears extended criticism of person you're in relationship with. Then you and partner reconcile. The emotional intensity that drove the venting fades. You've processed the conflict and moved forward. From your perspective, the issue is resolved. But your family member doesn't have the reconciliation experience. They only have the information from your venting. Their impression of your partner is shaped by your worst moment description without the context of reconciliation and ongoing relationship. This creates lasting damage. Your family member forms negative opinion of your partner based on information you provided during conflict. That opinion persists even after you've moved past the conflict. Years later, they're still viewing your partner through lens of that criticism. Machiavelli noted that first impressions and initial information create lasting frameworks for interpretation. The advisor who poisoned the prince's impression of someone early maintained that negative association even when later information contradicted it. Applied to relationships. Early negative information about partner creates lasting negative association in family members' minds. That association doesn't disappear when you reconcile. It becomes permanent lens through which they view your partner. The strategic approach is processing relationship conflicts privately or with professional support rather than venting to family. This protects your partner's relationship with your family by not poisoning that well with information shared during temporary conflicts. You can maintain close family relationships while keeping relationship conflicts private. You can have support system for romantic relationships that doesn't include detailed reporting to family members who will form lasting negative impressions. The person who vents extensively about partner to family often regrets that years later when family members hold ongoing negative views of partner based on old conflicts. The person who processes relationship issues privately maintains cleaner family-partner dynamics. Strategic relationship management means keeping romantic relationship conflicts out of family information stream to protect long-term family-partner relationships. As people develop intellectually and experientially, their belief systems often evolve. Political views might shift, religious beliefs might change, values might transform based on new experiences and information. Sharing these evolutions with family creates specific vulnerabilities. Family members often have strong investment in maintaining shared belief systems. When you announce that your political views, religious beliefs, or core values have changed significantly from family norms, you're threatening sense of shared identity and values. This threat often generates strong negative reactions, not because family members are close-minded necessarily, but because your evolution challenges their sense of family cohesion and shared worldview. They interpret your changed beliefs as rejection of family values rather than as your personal growth. Machiavelli advised maintaining appearance of shared values with one's community while holding actual beliefs privately. The prince who publicly contradicted established religion faced organized opposition. The prince who maintained public orthodoxy while holding private doubts maintained position. Applied to family. Announcing dramatic belief system changes before they're necessary often generates conflict without serving any strategic purpose. You can hold evolved beliefs privately while maintaining appearance of general alignment during family interactions. This isn't about being fake. It's about recognizing that family gatherings aren't optimal venues for announcing you've rejected family's political views or religious beliefs. Those announcements create conflict without corresponding benefit. You can maintain authentic identity while being selective about when and whether you announce belief evolutions to family. You can live according to your actual values without needing family's validation of those values. The person who announces every belief evolution to family often finds themselves in repeated conflicts about views that family members feel threatened by. The person who maintains privacy about evolved beliefs while focusing on relationship maintenance during family interactions avoids unnecessary conflict. This becomes particularly important for beliefs about social issues, politics, religion, or values where family has strong established positions. Announcing your evolution on these topics often generates more heat than light. Strategic belief management means distinguishing between beliefs you need to express publicly versus beliefs you can hold privately. Not all evolutions require announcement. Some are better maintained as private developments while you focus family interactions on areas of genuine connection rather than ideological conflict. The key question: does announcing this belief evolution to family serve any purpose beyond expressing yourself? If it doesn't serve strategic purpose and will generate conflict, privacy often serves better than proclamation. When you achieve success that exceeds family members' achievements, announcing it creates complex dynamics. Envy, comparison, and altered family hierarchy create tensions that often undermine relationships. This happens even with supportive family members. When you announce major success, significant wealth accumulation, prestigious position, major recognition, family members automatically compare their position to yours. This comparison often generates uncomfortable feelings even when they genuinely want you to succeed. The psychological dynamic. They're happy for your success in abstract, but confronting evidence that you've substantially exceeded their achievements triggers comparison and potentially envy. This isn't moral failing. It's automatic psychological response to comparative positioning within family hierarchy. Machiavelli observed that displaying superior success to peers triggered resentment even among supposed allies. The advisor who flaunted superior position to fellow advisors created enemies. The advisor who maintained modest presentation while holding superior position maintained better relationships. Applied to family. Ostentatious display of success triggers comparison and potential resentment. Modest presentation of same success maintains better family dynamics while protecting your position. This doesn't mean hiding all success. It means calibrating how you present it. You can acknowledge success while minimizing display elements that trigger comparison. You can share good news while avoiding details that highlight how far you've exceeded family members' achievements. The person who provides detailed wealth information, status symbols, and achievement specifics to family often notices cooling relationships and subtle resentment. The person who shares success modestly while minimizing comparative elements maintains warmer family dynamics. Strategic success management means being selective about success information you share and how you frame it. You can celebrate achievements while avoiding presentations that trigger destructive comparison dynamics. This becomes particularly important when success gap between you and family members is substantial. Large gaps create more comparison intensity. Modest presentation of success mitigates that intensity. The key is balancing authentic sharing of your life with strategic awareness that detailed success information triggers comparison that often damages relationships. You can be successful while being thoughtful about how you present that success to family members who might compare their position to yours in psychologically uncomfortable ways. Everyone has past behaviors they regret. Mistakes made, ethical lapses, periods of poor judgment. There's therapeutic value in processing these privately. There's strategic liability in disclosing them to family members. When you confess past mistakes to family, you're assuming they'll process that information supportively, or at least neutrally. Often they catalog it for future reference. The mistake you confessed becomes ammunition during later conflicts, or evidence cited when questioning your judgment. This happens even with well-meaning family members. They don't consciously weaponize your confession initially, but when conflict emerges or when they disagree with your current decisions, past mistakes you disclosed become relevant evidence they cite. You're not showing good judgment here. Remember when you did X? The past mistake becomes permanent part of their assessment framework for your decisions. What you shared, seeking understanding, becomes ongoing liability in their evaluation of your judgment. Machiavelli advised maintaining appearance of consistent virtue even when actual behavior included necessary deviations. The prince who confessed every tactical betrayal or ethical compromise faced ongoing questions about his judgment. The prince who maintained public virtue while handling compromises privately maintained authority. Applied to family. Confessing every past mistake provides them ongoing ammunition to question your judgment. Processing mistakes privately while maintaining reputation for good judgment protects your standing in family dynamics. This doesn't mean being dishonest when directly asked. It means not volunteering detailed confession of every past mistake to family members who will catalog those for future reference. You can take responsibility for past mistakes and make amends where appropriate while being selective about detailed disclosure to family members who might use that information against you later. The person who confesses extensively about past mistakes often finds those mistakes cited repeatedly in future conflicts. The person who processes past mistakes privately, while maintaining general reputation for good judgment, avoids that ongoing liability. Strategic past management means distinguishing between mistakes requiring direct amends versus mistakes better processed privately. Not all past errors require family confession. Many are better handled through private processing and changed behavior going forward. The key question: does confessing this past mistake to family serve redemptive purpose, or does it just provide them information they'll use to question my judgment later? As you develop psychological understanding, you often see family dynamics more clearly. You recognize patterns that were invisible before. Manipulation tactics, guilt mechanisms, favoritism patterns, scapegoating dynamics. The entire psychological ecosystem becomes visible. The temptation is sharing this awareness, sitting family down and explaining the dysfunctional patterns you've identified, exposing the manipulation, calling out the dynamics. This seems like it might create change or at least vindication. It doesn't. It creates backlash. When you diagnose family systems dysfunction to people operating within that system, they typically unite against the diagnosis rather than accepting it. You become the problem for identifying problems rather than being heard as insightful analyst. Machiavelli observed that courtiers who openly criticized court corruption were eliminated. The courtiers who saw corruption clearly but navigated it strategically survived. Announcing that you see the game doesn't change the game, it just paints target on you. Applied to family. Announcing that you see their manipulation patterns doesn't stop the manipulation. It makes you the identified problem while the patterns continue. You lose strategic advantage of clear sight while gaining no benefit. Strategic approach is maintaining clarity about family dynamics while not announcing that clarity. You see the patterns, you navigate them strategically. You protect yourself through boundaries and information management. But you don't lecture family about their psychological patterns. This maintains your strategic advantage. They don't know you see through their patterns, so they keep using same patterns rather than developing new ones. Your apparent naivety about their tactics is actually strategic positioning. You can protect yourself from family dysfunction while letting them believe you're less psychologically aware than you actually are. Your understanding remains private advantage rather than announced insight. The person who explains family dynamics to family members often gets labeled as the problem and faces united resistance. The person who understands dynamics clearly but navigates them quietly maintains better position. Strategic awareness means keeping your psychological understanding private while using it to inform your boundary setting and information management. You don't need to announce what you see to benefit from seeing it clearly. The power isn't in announcing your awareness. It's in using that awareness to navigate family dynamics more effectively while maintaining relationships through strategic engagement rather than confrontational diagnosis. The pattern is clear. Complete transparency with family members creates vulnerabilities that strategic disclosure avoids. Sharing ambitious plans early invites doubt during vulnerable planning phase. Exposing psychological vulnerabilities provides ammunition for future conflicts. Venting about relationships poisons family members' views of partners. Announcing belief evolutions creates unnecessary conflicts. Displaying success triggers destructive comparison. Confessing past mistakes provides ongoing judgment questions. Revealing awareness of family dysfunction makes you the identified problem. Strategic disclosure doesn't mean being dishonest or closed. It means being selective about what information you share, when you share it, and how much detail you provide. You can maintain warm family relationships while protecting your interests through calibrated information management. Machiavelli operated in environments where complete transparency was strategically dangerous. Information shared could be weaponized. Trust granted based on relationship category rather than demonstrated behavior often led to betrayal. The successful leader was selective about disclosure while maintaining necessary relationships. Modern family relationships exist in less dramatic context, but basic principles apply. Family members process information through their own psychological frameworks, which don't always align with your interests. Information shared transparently gets used in ways you didn't anticipate based on their patterns rather than your intentions. The solution is strategic disclosure. Share what serves relationship maintenance. Protect what could be weaponized later. Time disclosures for maximum strategic benefit. Maintain privacy about sensitive areas while engaging warmly on safer topics. This isn't about being cold or manipulative. It's about recognizing that even well-meaning family members have their own psychological patterns that shape how they process and use information about you. Strategic disclosure protects your interests while maintaining relationships. The practical implementation. Before sharing something with family, ask whether this disclosure serves strategic purpose or just satisfies transparency impulse. If it serves relationship, share strategically. If it creates vulnerability without corresponding benefit, maintain privacy. Type this commitment. I disclose strategically, not automatically. If this framework provided value, engage and share. Most people assume family deserves complete transparency, which creates vulnerabilities that strategic disclosure prevents. The ultimate freedom isn't eliminating family relationships. It's maintaining them on your terms through strategic information management that protects your interests while preserving connection.